Well, how can you get early treatment if you have a test that's not reliable for the first few weeks? And the fact that not everybody will have that rash.
Lee, how reliable is the first test, do you know?
I don't know about the first test, but in general, anywhere from about 50 to 65%.
The first
failure.
test is about 65%
Yeah.
accurate, is my understanding.
So it's, I think it's kind of an important health issue, especially for us being your ground zero, plus the fact that it's not only your patients, it could be you on that call for that person that flipped their ATV. It could be you on that call doing search and rescue for the missing hunter. You know, we can get exposed to this fairly easily. Now the bacteria, the Borrelia bacteria, which is a spirochete bacteria, which it can get into many different types of tissues. And there's a doctor that has done research in this, and he's been using a model similar to our understanding of syphilis, because apparently the properties of this spirochete bacteria are similar to the syphilis bacteria. And his theory is that when you have syphilis-induced dementia, why can't we have long-term infection of Lyme's and have dementia-induced, or Lyme's-induced dementia there? And his claim is that he has found spirochete bacteria in brain samples of people with Alzheimer's disease, and has found proof that the spirochete can be protected by a biofilm, that layer of cells that can go around certain bacterial infections that make them very resistant to treatment. So, it seems like they've got a lot of research to do, but the mainstream, the Infectious Disease Society is saying we already have a handle on this. This is fine. Anybody that tests positive, they get 2 weeks of antibiotics and they're good. But there's all these other people saying no. Yeah, and
Why is that? What do we know about it? Why it's not effective for just a 2-week doxycycline?
because these people are having persistent symptoms.
Why is that? There is some research out there. Have you read that?
Well, it's getting right into the brain tissue. Well, the biofilm, for one thing,
Right,
is that it's resistant. It's got the biofilm coating, so the antibiotic can't get to it.
There's also another reason too.
I didn't find anything else on it.
They think it's not just one bacterium, but 5 different bacterium that are actually causing the Lyme's disease itself. And so by hitting it with just one dose of 2 weeks of doxycycline, we're not picking up all the bacteria and getting rid of all 5 of the bacteria that actually cause the disease itself.
Mm-hmm.
So and what's really interesting, if you look at the research, is why is it so effective in dogs but not in humans? Because if you give a dog 2 weeks of doxycycline when they show symptoms, it knocks out completely out of the dog and they're fine.
Actually, they're finding that they have to go to 4 weeks.
Yeah, they are actually increasing. You're right. They are
On
going to
dogs.
4 weeks now. But dogs apparently are very receptive to doxycycline, and it is pretty effective in getting rid of the bacterial.
Now, when you're
But
talking
why is
about
that not in humans? That's our question right now.
When you're talking about that with the multiple strains, are you also talking about the anaplastoma,
And
plastosis,
leptos,
and
yep.
because I've got that
Mhm,
list, and part of the reason I wanted to go online was I wanted to bring up the website from the DHS with the entire list of tick-borne diseases, because Lyme's not the only one.
Right.
Mhm.
This is the one that's most
Prevalent.
popular or well-known. It started in like 1976, but we've got these other tick-borne diseases that people in Wisconsin are getting exposed to, and thus us EMS providers can get exposed to.
And aren't a lot of those other tick-borne diseases, you don't need to be exposed for nearly as long as you do for Lyme's.
They each have their own.
Contract it.
So
Yeah.
if you get bit, how long does it take you to actually contract the bacteria in the human?
24
It'll
hours.
take-
I
yeah,
thought 24
but-
hours.
48
You can
hours.
get it within-
It's now
within a
40.
week.
It's now 48 hours that they say that the tick has to be on you in order to actually get the bacteria into your body, so that you have that much time to get the tick off, and you probably don't need to be treated.
But not all ticks are carriers either.
No,
Correct.
So who is? What ticks are?
it's not that one.
It's not.
No.
Well,
Sure.
thanks for
Unfortunately,
clarifying. I
unfortunately, they're
appreciate
not
it.
as big or have the deep booming voice that Patrick Warburton does. I just thought I'd add that. Watch out for the tick. But there we go. There's the deer tick, and it's the nymph stage that generally carries. That's the one that's most likely to be carrying the bacteria. And we have to look out for damp areas, you know, when it's more humid and damp. On drier days, they're going to escape to moist areas, to areas where there's moss and stuff like that. But on more damp days, they're going to be on the tops of the leaves and on the edges and stuff where you can brush by them. And in the one movie I viewed, you know, a guy that's all, you know, he had the white suit on and that's all he did. He took a stick with like a light white cotton cloth and just walked through the trail, dragging this on the plants. And you go, oh, and he's, you know, he can pick out a male or female tick. It's barely, you go, oh, that's a male, that's a female. And he's picking them up left and right just by dragging this cloth through the trail.
What about wood ticks now, Lee?
I don't know about wood ticks. Pretty much concentrated on limes because of the controversy behind it.
The belief is now wood ticks are also carrying the bacterium, not just deer ticks.
My question I have is, any tick, you use the example of the dragging the towel.
Mhm.
I was under the understanding that they're kind of, they look for CO2 and heat also. So a white cloth wouldn't give that off. Does that, did you
Well,
find
that's
that in
because
your
he's,
research?
that's because he was on a dry, more of a humid day.
Okay.
So they're sitting on the leaves. And yeah, they're going to be attracted to something more human, but he's coming along and hitting them.
Right.
And they're just getting picked up by this porous cotton cloth.
Okay.
So it's just his way of collecting them. But during those certain times, that's where they're most often on the tips of leaves and in open plants for you to brush against them.
Will they more go towards heat or CO2 sources
Yeah,
like that?
I believe it's heat, but I don't know about the CO2.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was just curious.
I know CO2 for like mosquitoes and
Mosquitoes.
stuff, but
Okay.
I wasn't aware of with the ticks.
Okay.
Um,
And I think some people don't realize that in the dead of winter, you get your deer, you bring it in to a heated environment and skin it, well, they'll literally just crawl right off the hide.
I had one picture where they had the inside of the ear of one of the deer, and it was just all ticks, just lined right up. They were so plentiful, and with wood ticks, I mean, I've known people like people I knew out that worked on the reservation outside of Cloquet, and they'd come in and they'd find 30 ticks on themselves. You know, a combination of wood ticks or deer ticks, just from working out in the field by the lake.